والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. الله أكبر لله الحمد. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما واجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا ولا منا شقيا ولا محروما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So jazakumullah khair for Sunday morning attendance. We've tried this last term and alhamdulillah, I mean there was a dedicated group that came every Sunday. It was 8 o'clock, so it was a bit harder than this course, but because that was more of almost a 2-hour session, and they have Quran here at 10, we had to start a bit earlier, but inshallah we plan to do this at 8:30 for this class, and it'll be about an hour and 10 minutes, give or take, inshallah. So if I'm sure everybody here is in the right class because it's Sunday morning. You wouldn't come here if it's the wrong class. Is everybody on the Google Classroom before we get started? So everybody's getting messages, inshallah? Yeah, of course, yeah. So if you're interested to be a credit student, both ways we'll add you, but if you're interested in credit, just note it down in the attendance sheet after class, inshallah. If you're on the fence, again, you could wait till the end of the class to make that decision. And I'll talk about the difference between credit and audit soon, once we get this sorted out. Sister Nada, is this the PDF that's being shared or the PowerPoint? Oh, okay, still, eh? So if you actually are on the Google Classroom and you have a device, the notes, we post them before the class, so you can have access to them during the class. So if you want to do annotations or write notes, I try my best not to at least provide those so that you're not trying to copy everything on the slide and not listening to what I'm saying, because that defeats the whole purpose. So you have access to the notes if you want to access them now, especially since this is not working. So what we share here today, inshallah, will be in the notes. Just a few, I guess, housekeeping items as we sort through this. So inshallah, again, the class is every Sunday, 8:30 till about 9:30, 9:45. It'll go on for 2 semesters because we're covering JUZ Amma, and there are about 37 surah in JUZ Amma, and I mean, technically we could try to cover 2 or 3 surahs each session, but in an hour, that's not giving it, basically it's fair. Even with 2 semesters, we're not giving it its fair share, but at least it's a little bit more reasonable, inshallah. We usually start with a renewal of intention, because we're all here for the pleasure of Allah, inshallah. Right? At the end of the day, if we're here for anything else but Allah, then we're going to be losing out, obviously, on the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His pleasure. And so we usually start classes with that renewal of intention. And so the hadith today that I wanted to share, the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The best of you, خَيْرُكُمْ, the best of you, is whoever learns the Quran and teaches it. And I give this hadith in every class, not every session, but to start every class, because I feel, particularly since we're talking about the Quran, it's extremely important to know that if you really wanted to be the special person, at least it's moving. If you wanted to be the special person in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sight, then the Quran is the way to get there. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَاهُم مِّنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. That we have created the children of Adam. We have honored the children of Adam. وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. And we've carried them in the ocean and on the land. And we've provided them from the goodness of the provisions. وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. We favored them amongst all of the other creations. تَفْضِيلًا. So you'll notice when we talk about JUZ Amma, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses, repeats a verb and a noun from the same root, it's for emphasis. right? وَنَزَّلْنَاهُ تَنزِيلًا وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. They come from the same root, right? فَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing the essence or the climax of favoritism of the creation of Adam versus everything else. So imagine you now, you're sitting here, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, we've favored you amongst all of the other creation. And how many creatures live on this earth? Billions, right? There are over, I don't know how many million species that exist. We are favored amongst all of them, but not only that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored us amongst the humans by allowing us to know that He exists, right? So there are other, not everyone acknowledges, not every human acknowledges Allah exists, but out of those, again, the human is being favored. Out of those, Allah has allowed us to know that He exists, right? And accept that and believe in that. But not only that, out of those people, which are essentially Ahlul Kitab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose us to have the one true religion. So imagine the favor of Allah on us now, amongst all of the humans. And not only that, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us from amongst the Muslim believers to actually be people who have the right understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Because we know that there are Muslims that may not necessarily have the right creed. But not only that, on top of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored us by allowing us to be practicing Muslims. But not only that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored us by allowing us to be in His house, to learn His book. So imagine the tafdeel, one step, your levels and levels and levels above the base human who's already favored amongst all the creation. This is the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on us. Now, if you want to be basically the cream of the crop out of all of that, the way to get there is the Quran. خَيْرُكُم مَّن تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The best of you are those who learn Quran and teach it. And this is why we are here today, inshallah. So take a moment to renew your intention to be here, to be amongst the best of the best in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sight, to be as close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as possible. And of course, learning the Quran is your GPS to life. How do you navigate life? It's the Quran. And we'll talk about, obviously, the Quran in its meanings. Jazakallah khair. Oh, perfect, it's working now. So you realize now the issue, or is it just, it's one of Murphy's Laws type of things? Oh, okay. Sometimes that's what you just have to do. Okay, so I'll also tell you, because the formatting, this is a problem that we've always had, the presentation may not be the best formatting. It's because of it's not a compatible thing between the systems. So the PDF version should actually have the nice notes. The PowerPoint may be off, especially with the Arabic. You can see here already some of the misformatting that happens. Again, that's because of the compatibility of the systems. We had our first class 2 weeks ago. Who was part of that class virtually? Okay, so about half the people. Unfortunately, the recording failed. It recorded the first 3 minutes, 57 seconds. I don't know what happened. I clicked record for Zoom, and then when it closed the meeting, it said, do you want to save? I said, sure, and it didn't. So unfortunately, we don't have the recording for that, but inshallah, because we are doing the rest in person, we do record. So if you do miss, the recording will be available, inshallah, usually a day or two after. The notes will be on, inshallah, before the class. I do urge you, however, do your best to be in attendance in person, because number one, we take it, especially if you're credit, we take the attendance. But also, it just, this way you can ask questions, be more interactive versus just listen, because there are assessments that are going to happen. There's going to be assignments, inshallah, and so on. So it's for your benefit to learn, inshallah, and then this way you could be more interactive. So do your best to be in person going forward, inshallah. Again, I already mentioned the rest. The references we're using, I had a question a couple of weeks ago about what references. There's a list of at least 10 tafsir books that we're going to be kind of utilizing. I'm not going to pick one particular text and use that as the basis of tafsir. Basically, it's going to be a compilation of various texts. And the reason why I do that, and the reason why basically we do that with the IDP, it's not just a personal decision, but basically the committee decision, is that we want you to take as much of this in your personal lives as possible, and each tafsir approaches Quran from a perspective. So the classical approach of Ibn Kathir, for example, and Tabari is a historical approach. Al-Qurtubi goes, from the creed perspective. Zamakhshari and Ibn Ashur and others, there's a fiqhi perspective or a more contemporary perspective. So what we're trying to do is capture all of that, at least. I'm not going to talk about each ayah and what each mufassir says, because that'll take a long time. But the goal here is for you to walk out to understand what the surah is talking about, this theme of each surah in Juz' Amma, right? What are the unique elements of it, the unique points of the surah, and how does this surah fit into the whole, within the whole Juz', and where does the Juz' fit in within the Mus'haf? And what can I go and learn from and apply in my life? Okay? So if you have questions of where did this, where is this piece of information and so on, we can talk about that inshallah after class. But it is a compilation of different things. And we talked about the different types of tafsir 2 weeks ago. And so there's tafsir bil ma'thur and bil ra'i. So there are different types of tafsir based on concrete evidence and based on the opinion of the scholar. Again, it's not mere opinion. It's based on solid foundation of hadith and so on, and text, but that's going to be a compilation of these things. Okay? And if you want a more kind of concrete list of the tafsir, I can provide that as well in the Google Classroom or after the class. Any questions? All right, so expectations and student responsibilities, difference between basically credit and audit. So whether you're credit or audit, if you have registered for the course, please commit to it, and do your best to attend as much as possible. And certainly, if you do miss for whatever reason, make sure you catch up and not fall behind. Again, we are talking about tafsir, and the order of the surah in Juz' Amma makes a difference, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit in more detail, inshallah. But there is an order, and missing a class or two and then coming back, you may miss important components that are building up throughout. Take notes. I personally, I don't know about your memory, but if I don't take notes, I won't remember something the next day. Certainly in 5 years, you can look back at your notes and say, I remember this. You review it quickly. You have basically those notes that are going to help you. And remember, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. So if you expect to teach this to your siblings or your friends or your kids or whoever in the future, even lead classes as part of the IDA, the notes will help you. And we are going to be talking about some details that I'm sure if you don't write down, you may not remember all of them. Now, deciding between credit versus audit. So right now, I think it's about 2/3 registered credit, 1/3 is audit. For those who register as credit, again, you can have till the end of the day to make up your mind, inshallah. Again, we expect you to attend classes regularly and to participate during class. But we may have readings at the moment. We're just getting kind of into things. So there may be readings later on and assignments. So you're going to be expected to do those. Again, there's not going to be too many, and they're certainly not going to be very extensive. There's going to be an assessment as well throughout the course, likely two, a midterm and a final, at least for the first term. So you're expected as a credit student to complete that. If you're an audit student and you just want to write these assessments just for your own benefit to gain understanding of how much you absorbed or understood and learned, of course, you're more than welcome to do that. These assessments, again, are basically for you to also understand how much you've taken from the course. And please make sure, if you're a credit student, to read all email communications and respond, especially if we have a survey or questions on the Google Classroom. Make sure that you're keeping up with those. Any questions with respect to audit and credit students? So this is like the housekeeping that we normally do at the beginning. We won't do this every week, so it takes a bit of time. But if you have any questions, again, you're on the fence or not sure, we can talk after class too, inshallah. All right, so let's talk about Juz' Amma. So why Juz' Amma? Well, before we talk about Juz' Amma, it's good to understand basically the high-level breakdown of the Quran. Now, we all understand that the Quran, right, the first surah revealed was what? I think we need more coffee, or I'm already putting you to sleep. First surah revealed. First ayah revealed. Yes, from Surah Al-Alaq, right? Iqra, right? Iqra. And what we know about the Mus'haf is the first surah that we see in the Mus'haf is Surah Al-Fatiha, right? It's not Surah Al-Alaq, right? The last surah that was revealed was not Surah An-Nas, even though Surah An-Nas is the last surah you see in the Mus'haf. So there's a difference between the order for which the surah were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ and the current Mus'haf. Yes? Everyone acknowledges that, right? So who set the order of the Mus'haf? Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He obviously communicated that to Jibreel alayhi salam, and Jibreel alayhi salam communicated that to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so as the wahi was being revealed, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was telling the Sahaba, this ayah or this set of ayat fit in this surah, and this surah fits here, and so on, right? So the order was established by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the text that we have today. Now, the fact that there is a difference between the order of which the surah were revealed and they are in the order in the Mus'haf, there's a wisdom behind that, right? And there are tafsir that have come to discuss that and to highlight what these wisdoms are and this order is all about, right? So, for example, Sheikh Sa'id Hawa's Tafseer, Al-Asas, talks, takes that approach. It's like a holistic approach to the surah in their order and why they fit in that particular order. Now, Juz' Amma is obviously the last juz' of the Quran, juz' number 30. And if you look at the Quran holistically, again, it's broken down into 4 parts. The first part is called At-Tiwal, or Sab' At-Tiwal, the 7 long ones. Okay? And that spans from Surah Al-Baqarah to Surah Tawbah, right? Now you might say, well, those are 8 surah, they're not 7. That's because, and then this is the scholars, the Mufassirin who have broken this down. The 7 is basically they coupled Surah Al-Anfal with Surah Tawbah, given that both surahs talk about a similar theme, which is that of jihad or fighting. And Surah Al-Anfal, or Surah Tawbah rather, does not start with a basmala. So there's a continuation from one surah to another. So they've kind of lumped that as kind of one surah. And they've called them as Sab' Tiwal because, again, they're the 7 long ones. The longest surahs in the Quran are in that beginning. Okay? The next section is of surah, Al-Mi'in. Mi'in means they're about 100 or so ayat long. So the surah that come after that are basically about 100 ayat or so, and that name of that chunk, the second group of surah, is called Al-Mi'in. And then the third group is Al-Mathani. Al-Mathani is basically the surahs that are oft repeated or recited in prayers more than the longer ones, because they're a bit shorter. And the last group is Al-Mufassal. Al-Mufassal basically means the broken ones or the disjointed ones, and those are the shorter surah, in which case Juz' Amma falls in that group. So, I mean, there are different opinions where this classification of this group starts. Some say Surah Al-Hujurat, for example, all the way to Surah An-Nas. But for me, what's important for you to understand is that we're talking about the last part of the Quran, the last few ajza, which is in that group, and certainly Juz' Amma is the last juz' of that group. Okay? So why are we covering Juz' Amma? Well, Juz' Amma basically contains the essence and the main concepts of the entire Quran. Right? وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثْلُ الْأَعْلَى وَبِلَا تَشْبِيهٍ. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't compare Him to anything. Nothing can be compared to Allah, and nothing can be compared to His book. But the analogy is, just to give you, to highlight is, the books normally finish with a conclusion, right? And that conclusion contains the main points. And Juz' Amma contains the main concepts and the basic fundamental principles that are talked about or discussed in the entire Quran. And so if you learn Juz' Amma, you will get the gist of what the Quran the message of the Quran. And therefore you will be able to live your life and move forward by knowing Juz' Amma. Now, is that saying don't learn the other parts of the Quran? No, we're not saying that. But we're saying is that if you have that, you're good to move forward. And of course, the rest of the Quran has a lot of more elaboration, emphasis, explanation, and so on and so forth. And if you actually look at the surah in the Quran, right? For example, Surah Al-Hijr, Ibrahim, Nahl, those surah, for example, talk about the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from different perspectives. And they are fairly lengthy ones, right? A shorter version of that is Surah Al-Rahman. But Surah Al-Rahman is not in Juz' Amma. But Juz' Amma, remember, it contains every main concept talked about in the Quran. And that main concept of shukr and being thankful to Allah and Allah's blessings is Surah Quraysh. Few lines in Juz' Amma. Again, Juz' Amma gives you basically the main idea, the point in each surah. There's not a lot of emphasis, examples, stories, and so on and so forth. That's in the rest of the Quran. Juz' Amma came to summarize all of that in a capsule, basically. Okay? And that's why it's good to start off with Juz' Amma to get the understanding of all of those fundamental principles. And of course, it's the easiest to memorize, and then we teach it to our kids. Again, if we teach it, we learn it and teach it to our kids and others, and we know basically, the surahs that contain basically the main concepts of the Quran, then obviously that's a great starting point for us to be able to pursue our purpose in life. There are 37 surahs in Juz' Amma, and obviously all of them are short, going from Surah An-Naba, which we will talk about today inshallah, all the way to Surah An-Nas. It gets gradually shorter in length, but they're very concise, they are very powerful ayat, and they're very eloquent. And you'll notice a lot of you ask just a regular Arab to explain to you what these words mean in some of these the surah, and they actually wouldn't know, because again, there's eloquency and there's a lot of meaning behind these words. And you will get that, in as basic as you'll get in قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ, for example. You ask people, what certain words mean, and they won't know. Again, there's just a lot of eloquence and power to the meanings within Juz' Amma. So Juz' Amma, this is where we're going to be talking about today. Now, how is that broken down? Juz' Amma, you can break it down into 4 clusters. Okay? The first cluster basically is going to be the first 3 surah, which starts with Surah An-Naba, followed by Surah An-Nazi'at and Surah Abath. And this first cluster covers basically 3 essential components of faith. Okay? It's basically establishing the belief system. There's no sense in talking about what you need to do without knowing what it is you're believing in, right? There's no sense in talking about fiqh or doing X, Y, Z and refraining from ABC without knowing why you're doing it and what you're believing in. You establish the belief system, and the natural next step would say, okay, I understand this belief system, I buy in, I commit to it, tell me what to do. That's the natural inclination of someone who adopts a belief system. Yes, I'm fully invested in this, I understand it, I believe in it, so what do I have to do? You don't start with what we do and then say, oh, by the way, we do it because of this reason, right? And what you'll notice in Juz' Amma is most of the surah are revealed where? Mecca. So when we talk about tafsir, normally the mufassirin tell you the surah if it is revealed in Mecca or Medina. Why is that important? Anyone know? Yes. Right. Do we need the mic for the comments? Yeah. Sorry, we normally have a mic, so it's all recorded as part of the thing. Jazakallah khair. So yes, absolutely. Each phase of the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ, the mufassirin and historians break it down into two basically times. The Meccan period, which the majority of scholars take as from the time the Prophet ﷺ was the first ayat were revealed till Hijrah. Anything revealed in that time, not necessarily in Mecca, but in that time before Hijrah is called Meccan. And anything between Hijrah and the death of the Prophet ﷺ is called Medina, or Medina, right? Madani. Even if the Prophet ﷺ was doing Hajjat al-Wada' in Mecca, or he went to open Mecca, the ayat were revealed, it's considered as part of the Madani period. Now that's one classification, but that's the overwhelmingly popular one between what's Meccan and what's Madani. Now there are two different periods. Again, as Sister Maryam mentioned, in Mecca, the purpose was to establish the belief system, right? Doesn't make sense to ask people to refrain from alcohol when they don't know what they're believing in. Why would I leave alcohol? Right? Why does that matter? Right? So Mecca was the messaging within Mecca, the Meccan period is the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing that there's nobody to worship but Allah. Obviously the message of the Prophet ﷺ that he's the Prophet, the Day of Judgment, accountability, addressing the people in general, because it was calling them to basically the religion. This in Medina, the times changed, and now there is an ummah, and so it was more on building the community and the laws and the systems of Islam, and that's where a lot of the fiqh of fasting and hajj and marriage and divorce, etc., all came in that time, because you're establishing a community with its basically its laws and rules and so on. So JUZ Amma, most of it, except for 2 surahs actually, are in Mecca. So it is calling to basically, again, this is why the first cluster talks about the 3 most important or basic principles of faith. So establishing the belief system in JUZ Amma. Okay? And Surah An-Naba, again, we'll talk about it inshallah today. It talks about the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the story of life. You need to know the story of life. Why are you here? To be able, there's no sense in talking about, again, you need to do A, B, C without knowing why you're here. The second, which is Surah An-Nazi'at, again, we're going to be covering those inshallah in more detail, talks about the inner convictions and the struggle of the human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us each a vehicle to fulfill our purpose on earth. That vehicle, we need to understand its inner convictions to be able to direct it in the right way. Right? You need to know, so I know the path. Now this is the vehicle to take me to that path. I need to know how it operates. Okay? And the third is the model of behavior and character within that first cluster, and that's Surah Abasa. Right? How do you properly conduct yourself? So now going from the internal to the external. And that's the first group within JUZ Amma, the first 3 surah of this JUZ. Any questions so far? We're laying down the roadmap. So everyone, high level, 30,000 foot view of what JUZ Amma is talking about, so that you understand, okay, this surah fits in here for that reason. Right? It's not just an ayah by ayah meaning, it's more than that. The second cluster talks about choices. We won't talk too much about that today, inshallah, but once we get to that section, we will. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala. The third talks about model and ideal conduct. And the fourth talks about Islamic values. So, the second cluster of choices, this is what differentiates you from other creation. You have a choice, right? Yes, other creation, they have choices and what to do and whatnot, but they're following instinct, number one. Number two, they're not judged on those choices. The third, obviously, is the tools or adawat that that you need to be on the straight path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fourth is basically the qiyam, or Islamic values. Right. Any questions so far before we, about Juz' Amma and where it fits in the Quran, and basically the breakdown of Juz' Amma before we get started in Surah An-Naba? Okay? All right, so Surah An-Naba. What else, how else do you know this surah to be called? Amma, right? Surah Amma. And actually, Juz' 30 is referred to as Juz' Amma. And Amma is the first word that the surah starts with. So, you know, some Mufassirin called it Surah An-Naba. Others, like in different masahif, for example, Sahih al-Bukhari, Tafseer ibn Atiyya and al-Kashaf, they call it Surah Amma. Okay? There are other names to the surah as well, Surah al-Mu'sirat, which is one of the words used in the surah. Mu'sirat are rain clouds. Okay? Or Surah al-Tasa'ul, the questioning or the inquiry, because Amma yatasa'alun, what are they asking about or discussing or basically that's the root that people are using for that name. So for our reference, we're going to be jumping between Surah An-Naba and Surah Amma. This surah was revealed again in Mecca in early Meccan days, basically after Surah Al-Ma'arij and before Surah Al-Nazi'at. And that's the popular opinion. Early Meccan period, and Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, that the Quraysh used to talk to each other. Again, we're trying to show context of when this was revealed. They were discussing basically, you know, the Quran and, you know, this wahi that was coming to the Prophet ﷺ, and they were, you know, criticizing it and questioning it and so on. And so that was the context of which when this surah was coming down. Now, what is an-naba? In English, naba means news, right? It means the news. Well, what news? Well, different mufassirin have attributed news to different things, but they're all related, and we're going to take the approach that it's all of them. Okay? So one classification of the news is that it is talking about the Day of Judgment, okay? And that's a popular tafsir for that. Another one is the discussion of the concept of God, the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Another one is about the Quran, because as I just mentioned, the Quraysh were discussing this wahi that was coming down to the Prophet ﷺ, right? So this news referring necessarily to the Quran. We're going to take all of them. This news is really the story of life. This is the story of life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're going to be reading the ayat together, inshallah. What do I have? Yeah. Oh, and again, the subhanallah. So I'm going to have to maybe do a PDF and just share the PDF next time, because the formatting on the PowerPoint is really messed up. But you should have it in the notes, I think, properly, inshallah. So the Quraysh obviously were discussing the message of Islam, and everybody has a story or a version of the story. And they were discussing and quarreling and ridiculing or criticizing this message that the Prophet ﷺ came, whether it's the Quran or the concept of the Day of Judgment or the concept of God. We call it the story of life, right? The story of life. Everybody's got a version of the story of life. This is the true version. Surah An-Naba came. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us what this is all about, what life is all about in this surah. The story of life of what happened, what is happening, and what is to happen. Basically, everything that's here and the reason it's here. Because that's how you build a belief system. So Surah An-Naba talks about the story of creation, the Day of Judgment, the punishment and reward, and the human being's everlasting role of finding their way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the gist of the surah. Okay? This is the main theme, the story of life. What's happened, what's happening, and what's going to happen. and this is An-Naba. And with Surah An-Naba, if you look at it from the Quran perspective, or that people are arguing about a day of judgment or accountability, if you kind of think back at the time of Mecca, the word Naba is used for news, but Naba that doesn't say it's not talking about just khabar, what's happened already. Khabar is used, akhbar, right? If you guys watch the news on TV, it's reporting what just happened or what's happened in the past. Surah An-Naba talks about even the future, what's going to happen. So that's why it's not khabar, it's naba, because it's going to tell you what's going to happen, not just necessarily what's happening now, but what's happening in the future. So basically the story of existence is the main theme of the surah, and we're going to break it down into 4 parts. Okay? You see how we're going from a 30,000 foot view down to now the basic components of the surah. The surah starts off with an introduction, and we're going to be reading this introduction together, inshallah. If you have a mushaf in front of you, I encourage you, or on your cell phone, I encourage you to read along, inshallah, and certainly the translation as well. I'm supposed to have the translation show up. I actually don't. I'll follow my file here because it's not really visible. Okay, let's start together, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عما يتساءلون. عن النبأ العظيم. الذين هم فيه مختلفون. كلا سيعلمون. ثم كلا سيعلمون. Okay, so this is the first introduction of the surah, right? عما يتساءلون. What are they asking one another? What are they inquiring about between each other? عما يتساءلون. Now, the word amma is ayn mim in the mushaf. It's actually, in Arabic, it's an ma. It's 2 words, right? Rules of tajweed, right? You read it as amma, but it actually is written the way you pronounce it, right? So normally in Arabic, you write it as 2 words, but in the mushaf, it's written as 1 word. And the alif for an ma is removed, so it's amma. Okay? That's how it was written, and that's how, from the time, obviously, when the Quran was compiled, and this is the way it's come down to us. And this is obviously, this is not, the only place in the Quran where it has that kind of 2 words kind of combined into 1. There's many examples of that in the Quran. So, عَمَّا يَتَسَأَلُونَ. What are they asking about? عَنِ النَّبَأِ الْعَظِيمِ. The great news. الَّذِي هُمْ فِيهِ مُخْتَلِفُونَ. The news that they are in disagreement about. They don't have consensus. They don't see eye to eye. Again, everyone has a version of the story of life. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is presenting here what is the true version. What is life is all about? What is the story of life? Okay? كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ. Indeed, they shall find out. Indeed, they shall find out. So, when we talk about, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the words كَلَّا, the word كَلَّا means what in Arabic? Does anyone know? It means no. But in the Quran, it's not only in the Quran, but in the Arabic language, it could be used as no, or it could be used as emphasis. Okay? Kalla could be used as emphasis, not just no. So, indeed is the translation of that. Indeed, they will find out. Thumma kalla, and indeed, they shall find out. Now, this is the interesting thing, is that the human, subhanAllah, is so deluded with the concept of choice. We think we have a choice. We do have a choice, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ. Indeed, they'll find out about this news, this story of life. Indeed, they will find about it. Now, you either have a choice to find about it now and follow, or you can wait till the day of judgment, which case everybody will have found out the true reality. At the end of the day, everyone will know the true reality. The choice that we have is, do we want to know it now, or are you going to wait till the end when it's too late? It won't make a difference in the day of judgment. Everyone will find out, but it's too late. So this concept of choice that we have is really very temporary. We're basically choosing when, not if. It's going to happen. We will find out about the news. But it's the matter of fact is when. That's what the choice that we have is, the when. Once we pass, the news will be very clear. So everyone will eventually know about the news. The choice we have is when. So it's best to choose now. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us now. كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ. And again, the emphasis on ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ. Right? Repeating the ayah twice. Again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does that for emphasis. Every ayah in the Quran is important. But repeating it just to highlight, you will find out. Surely you will find out. So this is the introduction of the surah, talking about this great event, the great news, the story of life. So we're going to move on, inshallah, to the next part. Okay, so the next part is section number 2, which talks about, for the next 11 ayat. We won't read all of them together. We'll read some so that we can cover the meanings of the words, and you know basically where all this fits in. Now, pay attention to how these ayat start. Okay? Pay attention to how they start. أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ مِهَادًا وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. So, before we start talking about these ayat, know that in English and in Arabic, the word belief, there's a difference. In English, when you say believe in something, what people understand is you're believing, you're taking the step of adopting something without proof. And when you have knowledge, right? When you have knowledge, then you know. It becomes knowledge. You know something. So believing and knowing are two different things in English. In Arabic, that's not what it is. In Arabic, believing means you know. It's based on proof and evidence. So I want to say that early because, again, just the people out there, when they talk about, oh, do you believe in something? The idea is that you're taking a step blindly without necessarily any proof or evidence. But in Arabic, belief doesn't mean that. Belief means, iman means you are believing in something based on evidence and hard proof. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not a leap of faith. This is based on proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. Okay? So I want to highlight that early so that you understand when we're talking about belief, it's not just a blind belief. Okay? So there's a rationale behind it. أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ مِهَادًا. Have we not made the earth mihada? Now, mihada comes from, the meaning of mihad is cradle. What do you put in a cradle? A baby, right? A baby goes in the cradle. This is the environment through which the baby can survive. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the earth for us to be an environment for us to be able to not only survive, but live and thrive. Alam naj'al, have we not made the earth for you a cradle? Imagine that you are living on a terrain with all these hills and rocks and you're climbing it just to get everywhere. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it easy for us to be able to navigate the earth. Imagine how difficult it would be if that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make it into a cradle. Right? Notice how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is presenting this. Alam naj'al, have we not made? Right? Have we not made? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us His favors. Right? Talking about, remember this is the story of life, talking about the story of what's happened. Have I not made this for you? أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ مِهَادًا, an earth where you can thrive and be supported. وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا, and have we not made the mountains as pegs to hold the ground down so that it is stable, so that you can navigate this earth with stability? It's not, you're not shaking and experiencing difficulties with where you're living and you're situated in your environment. These pegs of the mountains hold the earth down. وَالْجِبَالَ, have we not made that for you? وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا, have we not created you in pairs so that you can have succession, you can have generation come after generation, so there's sustainability and gradual, from Sayyidina Adam's time, alayhi salam, all the way to the Day of Judgment, there's gradual generations of people that are created and are taking over being the guardians of this earth. Have we not made that for you? Imagine there's no succession. There's no sustainability. How difficult would that be? To restart everything from the beginning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, have we not made that for you? وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا. So we don't think we read that one. وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا وَبَنَيْنَا فَوْقَكُمْ سَبْعًا شِدَادًا وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا وَهَّاجًا. So we stopped off as, and have we not made your sleep for rest? وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا. Have we not made your sleep subata? What's subata? Subata comes from the word sabat, right? Which is the end, the cutoff, the end. And that's why Saturday, Sept, comes from that, is the last day of the week. It's the cutoff of the week. The new week starts on a Sunday, right? The Jews were not allowed to work on Saturday, at the end of the week. It's the cutoff of that week. The word subata comes from basically to end something, to cut off. Have we not made your sleep the end or the cutoff of your day? Again, the favor of sleep. Right? These are all favors Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. This is part of the story that's already happened. You were brought into into existence on this earth, and everything is set up for you. Everything is set up for you. The cradle of the earth, the stability of the ground. Right? You're created in pairs. You're sleeping to end your day, to get rest. And by the way, all these, you're saying, oh, these are all basic things. Yeah, they're basic and we take them for granted every single day. These are all the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we experience them. And this is the nature of the human, is they experience something every day, they start losing the meaning and the importance of it because they just take it for granted. There's a study done on a 17-year-old who went sleepless for 11 days. 11 days, no sleep. After a couple of days, the teenager struggled to stay focused and showed some signs of ataxia, which is basically inability to repeat like tongue twisters. This is after 2 days of not sleeping. And found it difficult to identify things just purely on touch. You gave him an apple, they couldn't, it's hard to identify. It's only after 2 days of no sleep. After 3 days, very moody. We probably get that earlier, personally, right? Uncoordinated. After day 5, hallucinations. After that, body starts to shut down. Expressionless. After 11 days, no expression, slurred speech, very, very short attention span. You ask to do simple math questions, they'll say, I don't remember what you asked me. Body's completely shut down. And this is only 11 days. This is the ni'mah that we have, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have we not made the sleep for you the end of the day? Your rest. And we take that for granted, that ni'mah of sleep. How much the human needs sleep to be able to survive. Right? Well, وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا. Have we not made the night a covering for you? Now, I don't know if you guys have ever lived out west in Canada or north, but the days in the winter are extremely short and they're extremely long in the summer. Now, if you have kids and you've lived out there, sunset during Ramadan, it could be as late as 10 o'clock p.m. If you have kids and you're trying to put them to bed at 7 or 8, good luck. We used to have to cover the windows with something to make it seem like it's nighttime because they won't go to sleep. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have we not made the night a cover for you? The cover is to make it easy for you to rest. Right? Have we not made the night a cover for you? And again, subhanAllah, these are some of the things that we take for granted that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. You ask people how hard is it to live in places where they don't have any sun for 6 months of the year. Right? Extremely difficult. And then no sun or no sun the rest of the year. It's really difficult. So the convenience of having that so we can sleep and rest and wake up and move on with our lives. وَجَعَلْنَا نَهَارَ مَعَاشًا. And we've made your daytime ma'asha. Ma'asha comes from the word ma'ash. Ma'ash is to live. In modern day, we use the word ma'ash as salary, right? How much you're taking home from work. This is my ma'ash. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, have we not made the day a time for you to go out and work so that you can gain sustenance and provision for you and your family? Again, we take it for granted. Anyone here who's worked the night shift knows how difficult it is. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, have we not made, again, favor upon favor from Allah to tell us everything is set up for you, it's ready to go for you, you had nothing to do with it. This is the version of the story that's already happened. Right? And it's coming to where that's going to fit in throughout the rest of the surah. وَبَنَيْنَا فَوْقَكُمْ سَبْعًا شِدَادًا. And we created above you, or we built above you, بَنَيْنَا comes from built, above you, 7 strong ones, referring to the heavens. The 7 strong heavens. Now the number 7 in Arabic, in the Quran, is sometimes used as literally 7 or figuratively a lot. In the Arabic language, it could be either figurative, which means just a lot. You know, the Prophet used to make istighfar 70 times in a day. Does that mean literally 70 times or many times, right? That's the meaning. The number 7 is symbolic for many times. And so it could mean literally 7 heavens or many layers above you that are very strong. Shidada. وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا وَهَّاجًا. And we made for you a siraj wahaj. Right? Siraj is the source of light, and wahaj is where you get so siraj wahaj is basically the source of light where you get the energy. So it's not just that you have brightness that comes out of it, but also the energy. And this is referring to the sun, right? It's the source of light and heat are both coming from the same place. So in the moon, for example, just reflects light, but the sun gives you the light and the energy. And I think, reflecting on the sun, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we made for you the sun. So without the sun, had the sun been a few centimeters closer, we wouldn't be able to live on earth. It'd be too hot. And if it was a little bit farther, we wouldn't live on earth because it'd be too cold. Yes? You just have to turn on.
You're just reminding me of how, subhanAllah, when the Quran was revealed and where it was revealed is just like it was revealed in a place where people could live without really struggle, like here, like with coats and hats and mitts, and it was like the perfect condition to reveal the Quran as well. Like when you think about the conditions and where it was actually revealed in the time and the prayers and whatnot. Like as you said before, like in northern Canada, like if we were to make the prayers according to that time in northern Canada, it would just be so hard to follow Islam, right? So it's just subhanAllah, the barakah of where it was released and when it was released is such an important thing as well.
Right, absolutely. And also these ayat are not talking about the exceptions, right? These are talking about generally. And everybody on earth, 99.9% of the population this applies to. The 1.1% is because people went out there and discovered and started to establish communities. Again, it's not to say it's impossible to live there, but it's extremely difficult. You don't have to live there, but you can. I mean, but even then, you still can survive on earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this place a cradle for us. And so, you know, this whole concept of siraj wa haj, of the sun, the amount of energy emitted by the sun. So, just to put things in perspective, the size of the sun. Okay? Let's say you had 1 trillion cows. Cow's pretty heavy, right? About 2,400 pounds. Okay, male cow. 1 trillion cows, male cows. If you took 1 trillion and you actually established 1 trillion fields, each of those 1 trillion fields would have 1 trillion cows. Okay? And that would be one part. And imagine you multiplied that by 1,000. That's the size of the sun. 1 trillion times 1 trillion times 1 trillion to the trillion, not times. 1 trillion to the trillion times to the 1,000. That's the size of the sun and the amount of energy it emits for humans to be able to live. Now, if it's too much energy, you burn. You become like Mercury or Venus. You can't live. It's not a cradle anymore, right? And if it's too little energy, it's too cold to survive. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed it perfectly for us to be able to live and thrive. Have we not made that for you? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. Have we not made this? This is not by coincidence. This is all part of the story. Where do we leave off? وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا وَهَّاجًا وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ مَاءً ثَجَّاجًا. And we brought down from al-mu'sirat, the rain clouds, right? Pause here for a second. Mu'sirat comes from asara. What is asara in Arabic? Squeeze, right? When you squeeze something, you have things that, liquid that comes out of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing the rain clouds as things that when you squeeze, they emit the rain, right? And how much rain? It's plentiful, right? وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ مَاءً ثَجَّاجًا. Plentiful, abundant, so that you can, again, water is a source of life. 70% of the human is water. Without water, nothing can survive. Not only drinking, not only eating or cooking, but cleaning, right? But livestock and agriculture, even fuel, transportation fuel. You need water to produce it. Everyone thinks you get oil from the ground. It's not that simple. There's a lot of things that go into making fuel so you could move around with airplanes and vehicles and trucks. You need water, right? Water is the essence. I'm a chemical engineer, by the way, by training, okay? Water is in every single process that produces or manufactures anything. You need water. You have a source of water, you can't do without it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أنزل من المعصرات ماء ثجاجا لنخرج به حبا ونباتا. So let's read those ayat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. لنخرج به حبا ونباتا وجنات ألفافا. So we have made the rain come from the rain clouds in abundance, right? لنخرج به حبا ونباتا, so that we can bring forth habban, seeds, wanabata, and plants. So you can think about the seeds, how it starts. Everything starts as a seed and it grows into a plant. Or you can look at it in terms of seeds that grow into fruits that humans can eat, and plants or shrubs that all other creation can eat. Again, for what purpose? For them to be able to eat that material, eat that food, to become your food, a sustenance for you. This is all part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, have we not made all of this for you, including your sources of food, your drink and your food, for you to be able to thrive and live. وَجَنَّاتٍ أَلْفَافًا. And from that plants, jannat, gardens that have grown, alfafa, where the branches are actually, twisting around, and so plentiful. Have we not made all of that for you? And that's the end of the first section after the introduction. Alam naj'al. Have we not made? And we've made this, and we've created this, and we've built this, and. Part of the first part of the story is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, this is the beginning of the story, and we've made all of this for you. You came in and it's all ready. You had nothing to do with it. And the next section starts, and we'll stop here inshallah. Inna yawm al-fasli kana miqata. So, inna is indeed the day of separation. Kana miqata, we'll talk about that next week inshallah. But you see what happened? Do you not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You're still arguing about the news? You're still discussing what the story is? Have you not seen this? And have we not made this and this and this? You're still arguing? What's coming is Yawm al-Qiyamah, right? Inna Yawm al-Fasli kana miqata. You've seen everything around you, you're still denying, well, the day of judgment's coming. And that's the next part of the news, what's going to come. The next part of the story, what's going to happen. And that's the first beginning of Surah An-Naba or Surah Amma. Anyone have any questions or comments before we close? Yes.
11 ayahs connects to the theme of choices. I didn't see this.
Not yet.
Not yet.
The surahs that talk about choices are the ones that are, the ones in the next section of JUZ Amma. This is talking, the first section of JUZ Amma talks about establishing the basic fundamental principles,
Okay.
which are basically the story of life, the story of creation, why you're here and what you need to do, and that's Surah An-Naba.
So these second ayahs still belongs to the first classification. Like we said, there's four.
All of Surah Amma, all of the surah are talking about the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within the first cluster. The first cluster, the first three surahs of JUZ Amma, the first one, Surah An-Naba, surah number 78. Right?
So these clusters, okay, I got it. So these clusters are for the all JUZ, not for Surah An-Naba, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So, no. So, yeah, so the Surah An-Naba, Nazi'at, and Abasa.
Okay.
These first surahs covering the first cluster.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, Jazakumullah khair, barakallah fikum. If you haven't signed up to, as a credit or audit, if we don't have your email, please note it down here on the sheet. We're taking attendance. Just to add you to the class, the Google Classroom, if you're not on it already, put your email, please. If you decide that you want to be a credit student after this class, make sure you put your name and say credit. Otherwise, just put your name and say, audit, and put your email so that we can add you if you're not on the Google Classroom. Again, inshallah, 8:30 sharp, inshallah, next week. Jazakumullah khair. We'll finish Surah An-Naba bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun.